Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, would care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light the way for my ever-wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I'm yours. I'm yours. Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that calmed the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I'm not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. Hey, everybody! Thanks for joining the broadcast. How you guys doing? Little pop-in broadcast. We're just gonna, hey, just one needed to broadcast. I've been praying about it, and that's what comes about. So, great song for today. Yeah, I Am Yours for sure. And we're gonna bring our friends on from Live.me here, and as soon as I'm done sharing out, guys, make sure you share out. Make sure you share out to your groups. That new thing that we found out about sharing out to groups. That's a pretty interesting way of broadcast or of sharing out. So if you do the little three dots, and then you do what's going on. Thanks for joining. And then you do in Periscope land, you do the three little dots, and then you do the share to your groups. You finally catch me live. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for joining. Now what I gotta do is figure out how Pastor Rick did sharing out to his people at the same time. So this must be I wonder if it's a Android thing maybe. So yeah, let's share out. Let's get everybody in here. Let's everybody hear the Word of God tonight, because that's what we need to do for sure. Gotta share that Word. Alright, so let's pray. Lord Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time tonight. Lord, we just ask for eyes to be opened, ears to be opened, and minds to be clear and ready to receive your Word tonight, Lord. Lord, if there is anything that we need to do tonight, Lord, we just ask that if it is your will, that it be instructed to us in some way, shape, or form. Lord, we just ask for this guidance and Lord, allow those who need to learn more about you to learn more about you tonight, Lord. And any of those who need to be strengthened or to be encouraged or to come back to you tonight, Lord, we just ask that be an avenue that we may venture down tonight. Lord, if it is your will, we ask it in your mighty and powerful Son's name we pray. Amen and amen. Alright guys, let's get into this. This is I'm going to bring on Kitty live in a minute, but we broadcast on several different platforms. So tonight we're broadcasting on YouTube, YouNow, Live.me, DLive.io, Periscope, Facebook, Twitch, Smashcast, FC2, Peaks, Instajib, Vaughn Live, Africa TV, OK.ru, and it will soon be Kitty Live as soon as I get done with this other phone sharing stuff out. Dooley's Left Legs. Thanks for joining. Very interesting name. Alright guys, so once again, thanks for sharing out. Thanks for all the hearts, all of your invites and follows and shares. You guys are awesome. Thanks for all that. Great stuff. Alright. So, who am I? I am Jason Wallace. I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a prayer warrior. I'm an intercessor. That means I pray for you. I'm a Bible reader. I'm a devoted husband and father. Hey, how's it going, Tom, Liverpool FC? I'm guessing you're, do you do any spiritual readings? Yes, absolutely we do. Alright, here we go. Where was I? I'm a devoted husband and father. I'm a child of God. I am a new creation in Christ. I'm a citizen of heaven. I'm a member of Christ's body. I am a friend of Christ. I am righteous and holy. And I am a proud member of the Jesus Did It family. And guys, you guys can join the Jesus Did It family as well. If you go to JesusDidIt.org, right, you can download some of this great stuff. What's going on? Who's that guy, JR? What's going on, buddy? Thanks for joining. Hey, Queen Bee, thanks for joining over there on Live.me. Yo, what's going on? We might have to do a special song tonight just because JR is here. So right there is your download, right there, red arrow, download that thing. That is you guys can't see it, sorry. Go to JesusDidIt.org and press the red arrow. And you can download the I am statements as well. Many more than what we just did. And definitely, guys. And also make sure you're following in the middle. Who love a reading? We got readings, man. We got a couple readings coming up here in a minute.
Right there in the middle is the official Jesus Did It broadcasters. It's very upsetting to see my friend Joshua Ello be moved from the top row down to the bottom row, but his choice is that it's time to move on and do some local ministry and put his time and attention, effort into that. And you know what? We do not deny anybody to be able to do that. So we're so thankful for our brother that was here with us. And who knows, he might pop in more, once in a while and share. We never know, but it was a good season working with our buddy Joshua Ello. But you can join us also at the Jesus Did It group on Facebook off of this place, right? He is a great guy, isn't he? I absolutely love him. He is probably one of the... He's going to be a friend of life for me. I'm pretty sure of that one. He's definitely someone who's made an impact on me just because of his wisdom and his knowledge for such a great person, Plus that he's a really good friend. So I can't say nothing but good stuff about him. Alright, so some stuff to buy over there if you're interested. You can get some t-shirts and mugs and whatever have you. And then right down there, welcome John Smye on your first day on Periscope. Thanks for joining. If you want to find any more of my links, you can go to my Linktree site at linktr.ee/Jason R. Wallace 7, and you can get any of the other platforms that I'm on. What are we doing? We're doing our singing for tonight. So, well, let me see why this thing's loading up. Let me get that thing loaded up here real quick. Singing. Smule page, where are you? Where are you, Smule page? Where'd it go? Here it goes. Da-da-da-da. There it is. Alright. What do you think? We're gonna do a worship song for sure. And JR, just for you, we're gonna do another song too, but I think, where is that? I want to do one. There we go. We're gonna play this one. Oh, wait a minute. What happened? Wrong view. Where'd it go? What's going on here? What'd they do to my thing? Oh wait, I clicked the wrong thing. Here it is. Here you go, guys.
Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. And you've been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. No, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Overwhelming, reckless, incomprehensible love.
Amen.
God bless you. Thank you for joining.
Amen. There's nothing better than His love, right? And it's just He just shows it in many, many different ways. And I'm just so glad to be able to be a receiver of that love, right? And to acknowledge that. JR, what do you think, man? Should we do the song? Should we do the song Rainbow Connection? Is it a Rainbow Connection night? I think it's a Rainbow Connection night. I haven't played that song in a long time. I have to go down and dig it out and see if it still plays. There's a pretty old song that we did a long, long time ago. I've been actually trying to go back through some of the old songs and redo them because as you sing more and more and more, your voice becomes, I wouldn't say my voice doesn't become better, but it definitely has become different, right? So yeah, it's a Rainbow Connection night. Let's see if it plays. There it is.
First off, my friend JR. Revelation 10:1. I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet were like pillars of fire. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. And rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it, and look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing, and what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep? And have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that's called the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La da da dee da 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 dee da da. Oh, Jesus is our connection.
All right, yeah. So Jesus is our connection, right? And it's good to take a secular song and wrap some verses around it, and really just enjoy that. That Jesus is our connection, and I'm just glad to be able to be here, to be a servant, to just be able to share His word, and I may not be the best singer in the world, but you know what? I try to give my best. Pitbull Beer Masters in the house. Just want to let you know that. Thanks for joining. Diane came in as well. Thank you so much for joining. All you guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting on such a high level with all the hearts and invites and follows and shares, and all these other little things that go on in the other programs as well. Guys, we're on Kitty Live tonight as well. It's a new platform where we're trying to reach those in. That's right. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Absolutely. All right, so let's get into our Bible reading for tonight. Our Bible reading is is the point that we start losing people. Where is my screen? There it is. And it must be hidden. It is hidden. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? There it is. Now it should see it. Alright, well, let's do that again. There it is. Okay, Bible screen. Alright, so the Bible screen here, we're reading from Psalm 92 tonight. And Psalm 92 is, I don't know, I didn't get a chance to look at it ahead of time, so it's a surprise for me too. excuse me, Psalm 92. We will not be reading it in the King James Version. Let's read it in... You know what? Let's do ESV tonight. Who's that? Desert Liz is in the house. Desert Liz, thanks so much for joining in the broadcast. It's been a little while since we've seen you guys. Some of you guys, and it's so good to see everybody come back around. And they're doing some interruption. Oh no, Blue Letter Bible will be unavailable. Well, we got it right now, so we're good. Alright, Psalm 92. How great are your works? A psalm, a song of the Sabbath. It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your steadfast love in the morning and your faithfulness by night, to the music of the lute and harp, and the melody of the lyre. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the works of your hands I sing for joy. What's going on, Buzz? How great are your works, O Lord. Your thoughts are very deep. Here we go. A stupid man cannot know. The fool cannot understand this, that though the wicked sprout like grass, and all the evildoers flourish, they are doomed to destruction forever. But you, O Lord, are high forever, on high forever. Not high forever, you're on high forever. For behold, your enemies, O Lord, for behold, your enemies shall perish, all evildoers shall be scattered. But you have exalted my horn like that of the wild ox. You have poured over me fresh oil. Oh, there we go. My eyes have seen the downfall of my enemies. My ears have heard the doom of my evil assailants. The righteous flourish like the palm tree, and grow like a cedar in Lebanon. They are planted in the house of the Lord. They flourish in the courts of our God. They still bear fruit in old age. They are ever full of sap and cream. To declare the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. And that was tonight's reading, and we read it in the ESV tonight just to be a little different. That's tonight's Bible reading. Excuse me. Alright, there, I saw it dropped it. Alright. Your scope today was on joy. See? God works in an amazing way to interweave things, and the stuff that people talk about is very interesting sometimes when it's you're going from broadcast to broadcast to broadcast to broadcast, and you're hearing very similar messages or complementing words. You know that the Holy Spirit is at work, right? And that's definitely something to keep aware of. Alright, here we go. We read from the Our Daily Bread. Our Daily Bread is a free publication. You might be able to get it at your church. If not, you can go to odb.org. You can get they got all kinds of stuff. They got it on the web page. They get emails. They've got what do you call it? An app. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do, and it's a really, really good tool to use. It's a great devotional, and the best part is it's free. And if you do feel led to support them, they have mechanisms to be able to do that as well. But it's free, so we definitely want to read this. If you are in the Buffalo area and don't have a means of getting this booklet, let me know. I am an ambassador for Our Daily Bread, which means I have copies of this with me mostly all the time. So reach out to me, direct message me, and I will meet up with you and give you a copy if you're in the Buffalo area. and they have given me rights to be able to read this content on my broadcast. So just to let you guys know that as well. So for Thursday, August 29th, the title is Use Your Voice, and this is written by Evan Morgan, who happens to be a guest author. I was invited to meet a world-renowned pianist. Since I grew up immersed in music, playing the violin and piano, and primarily singing solos for church and other events, I was thrilled at the opportunity. When I arrived to meet the pianist, I realized he spoke little English, and to my surprise, he provided a cello for me to play, an instrument I'd never touched. He insisted that I play, and he would accompany me. I screeched out a few notes, trying to mimic my violin training. Finally admitting that I was lost, we parted ways. I awoke realizing the scenario had been a dream. But since the musical background presented in my dream was true, in my mind lingered the words, "Why didn't you tell him you could sing?" God equips us to develop our natural talents and our spiritual gifts for others. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Through prayerful reading of the Bible and wise advice of others, we can better understand the spiritual gift or gifts that is uniquely apparently not easy for me to say tonight, uniquely ours. The Apostle Paul reminds us that whatever our spiritual gift, whatever our spiritual gift, we're to take time to find it and to use it. Knowing the Spirit distributes the gifts just as He determines. Let us use the voices the Holy Spirit has given us to honor God and to serve other believers in Jesus. Easy for me to say. Tongue-tied. There we go. So what's your spiritual voice, and how can you use it today? Why is it wrong to want others' spiritual gifts? Ooh, that's a tough question. What do you think? Alright, let's pray. Father, show me how you've gifted me and how I'm to use those gifts for others. Amen. Today's reading was from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. Sorry. And the key verse for today is 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. So that's pretty good stuff there. So yeah. So guys, we did our devotional, all that cool stuff. So now guys, if you have any prayer requests or praise reports, we'd love to pray for you. We'd love to hear, that's right, serving others and to glorify God. You know, it was a really good experience, you know, while we're chatting here and we're talking, I'm still, if you got a prayer request or praise reports, please put them in the chat stream. We'd love to pray with you and for you. It was a really good experience, going and visiting with the rest of the team, in Texas. It was, it really helps when we do ministry and, we serve people. And it was really, really an honor to be in the presence of Pastor Rick Becky and Joshua and Mama Cat and her husband Mike. Really, really great. Just great, faithful people that just show the love of Jesus every step of their walk, and they're just it's a great time. It was a really good, refreshing time as well. It was really, really cool being able to sing along with these guys in person, right? Not just, on a screen, through a Zoom call. Connecting with people is really important. And I think that if we use that time, we're in Texas. Oh, we went to, looks like you guys we were having some fun, absolutely. We were worshiping God, and it just, it's just a totally different feel. We were in Houston area, near Houston. We're in one of the suburbs, right? The pizza I didn't get to do the pizza. We had left very early that morning on Monday because we had to get home to get to my daughter's orientation for 6th grade. So I didn't get to have the pizza. I'm very upset. So now I'm going to have to go back to Texas just to get the pizza. So that gives me a good reason to go back to Texas, right? And, who knows? But it'll be cool. Of course I had some Holy Smoke and Barbecue, absolutely. That was well worth the trip, by the way. And if you were anywhere in the Houston area and you're looking for barbecue to be catering for barbecue, I definitely highly recommend you go seek out Joshua Ello and his Holy Smoke and Barbecue. That man is passionate about smoking the meat and making sure that it tastes good, looks good. It's just it's great to see his love and what he does. And definitely, if you're in Houston, seek him out. I guarantee you he will. You will not be disappointed. I'll tell you right now. It was good stuff. Good stuff. What's going on over there? How you guys doing on Kitty Live, new stream software? Kitty Live. Noticing that it's mostly Asian countries, but hey, we want to reach everybody with the Word of God. So, guys, if we got no prayer requests, no praise reports, that's okay. I'm all right with that, and it's all good because then we can all get to bed a little bit early because it is midnight. And on Periscope, we had 962 people visit this stream. Wow. That is amazing. And who has given 5,000 hearts so far? Who is that? That's Angel Love. Angel Love's 5,000 hearts. Your fingers got to be hurting. Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for pumping them hearts. You guys are awesome. And we broadcast here. What did he make? He made brisket. Yeah, he made brisket. He made some ribs. Brisket and ribs is what we had. Oh, and some sausage too. Brisket, ribs, sausage. Yeah, that was pretty much my plate. It was just the meat. I had a little bit of that stuffed potato salad, but the stuff that food eats, vegetable stuff. But it was a good time. It was a great time worshiping. It was a great time praying. Just connection and fellowship. And I highly recommend if you guys are out there with near anybody, and take the chance to connect with somebody from the ministries. on Periscope, on the different groups, and definitely, if there's a meetup to be had, you guys should do it for sure. It's a fun time, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I'm really glad to be part of this group and to just to share God's love with all those that want to be here, and to help spread the word of God, right? So, it's good stuff. So, and all right, well, you know what? Also, too, I loved going to see the different churches. So, last year we went to Pastor Rick's church. This year we went to Joshua's church. And it's really cool to see how different churches do different things, because it kind of gives you a different feel for things. So it was really interesting, the lighting and stuff like that. Like if you go back in I think it's my last broadcast that I have on here, there was one of the most favorite songs that I love in the world. That beautiful song by Phil Wickham. They did that, so I recorded that on there, so you can see on Periscope. If you go back to one broadcast, you'll see it. It's really good song, but it was really interesting to see the lighting and how they did stuff, and it was a good experience. Pastor did a great job explaining the word too. It's nice to be able to see that. How's it going, Nick? Thanks for being here. But yeah, so we had a great time, and I can't wait to be. Oh, I guess I might have to take care of something here in a second or two. But yeah, we had a great time. It was a good broadcast too, as well. I loved just spending time doing that. My day is going pretty good. I really can't complain. It's been a good day. We were able to read some of God's Word, so I was able to do what I came here to do. Is to read His Word, because it makes me obedient, right? So it's definitely something someone who believes wants to do, is to be obedient to God and His Word, for sure. So there we go. Alright, so I'm ready for that, when that happens, if that happens. Alright, well, guys, if you have any prayer requests or praise reports, please put them into the chat stream. We'd love to do that. And very good. Alright, we got no prayer requests, no praise reports. We're good. Let's move on. We've had quite a bit of viewers tonight, so on a bunch of different platforms, and quite a bit of viewers actually on a bunch of platforms. So it's really cool to see that. It's interesting that I didn't know that Twitch has a closed caption. I wonder if that's something I turned on, or if it's something that's just on mine. That's really interesting. Never saw that before. Anyways, it's totally not getting the right stuff, for sure. That's funny. Definitely not. Alright, guys, so I guess we're gonna start shutting it down, because it's about that time. Alright, if you have or need or know of somebody, church, business, or even your own personal live streaming efforts. If you want to get that stuff moving, if you want to learn how to broadcast, how to do this stuff, how to do the multiple streaming, how to do all these different screens and all these different things that you see on the broadcast. If you need some coaching, I can definitely offer some assistance, and send me an email, and we can start talking about your budgets and what you already have and things you might need, and we'll work through some stuff, and if there is any money that comes in from that, we would put that obviously back into the ministry here, because technology gets outdated pretty quickly. So we're almost at a point where we're gonna need to do some upgrades here as well. So praying about it and seeing that if we have we're able to, God will provide. I'm not worried about that at all. God will provide, and that's the only thing that we can do is just put our hope and put our prayers in it, and know that God will provide no matter what happens. So our Jesus Did It broadcast, our monthly broadcast, we don't have a date yet. We don't have a topic yet, because we're working on something, and if what we work on really comes to fruition, it's gonna be really cool. That's all I can say. That's all I can say at this point in time, is it's gonna be really cool if we can pull it off what we want to do. So we definitely want to let you know that. Alright, so our friends on Peaks, if you wish to donate to the ministry, please make sure you use the in-app payment method. Sorry, I gotta do this. So Peaks, make sure you use the in-app payment method. Alright, for the rest of you guys, if you guys want to support the ministry in any way, like help with the computer fund or whatever, I'm not asking for money. If you feel led to do it, there's the information. I'm not gonna sit here and beg and borrow and steal, or whatever people say. Right? If you're interested, there it is. It's just there available for you. I'm not pressuring you into anything. I'm not asking for money, but if you wish to support, there it is. That's it. So if you guys have any questions about that, you can certainly reach out to me, and we would love to just talk to you and see about that. And don't be afraid to contact me at all. Yeah. So I guess let's just go back into our prayer, and let's pray on out of this broadcast, because it's been a really good broadcast, and that's what we want to do. All right, so let's pray. Lord, Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this amazing time tonight to be able to spread your word to so many people. Lord, I just thank you for this opportunity to be able to work in your ministry, Lord, and to just help and guide people who believe and people who have no belief, Lord. Lord, I pray for those who don't believe, that their hearts be changed, Lord. I just ask that their eyes be opened, and that they renew their mind in you, Lord, and just get to know you more. Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to spread your word and be able to help fellow believers and strengthening their walk and helping them to believe even more that you are our Lord and our Savior, that you are our God, that you are the one who has died and was rose again to save us from our sins. Lord, we just thank you for that opportunity to be able to just serve you, to be able to praise you, to love on you and worship you. Jesus, we love you, and we thank you so much for everything that you do for us. every single day. Lord, in your mighty and powerful Son's name, we pray to you, Father God. Amen and amen. Alright, guys. I love you guys. You have a nice night. Get some rest. Be blessed. And know that Jesus Christ loves you. And that is the truth. Alright, guys. I love y'all. Let's get a little bit of outgoing music here. And then we'll fade it on out like we normally do. So let's see. What song we're going to do here? Thank you, Jesus. Absolutely. What song are we going to do on the way out tonight? Let's see. Maybe we'll pick an older song. Been kind of hanging around the same songs here. Let's see. JR, thanks for joining, buddy. Here you go. Revelation song tonight. I love you guys. Good night. Get some rest. Be blessed.
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is he. Sing a new song to him who sits on heaven's mercy seat.
Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Holy, holy is he. Sing a new song to him that sits on heaven's mercy seat.
The Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Clothed in rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, rolls of thunder, blessing and honor, strength and glory and power be to you, the only wise King. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you.
Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder, at the mention of your name. Jesus, your name is power, breath and living water, such a marvelous mystery. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the
creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah, with all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah, with all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. I will adore you.
Yes, thanks for joining. Praise God.
Praise God. Bless you.